Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, for our purposes today, Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Time for another show with me away from the microphone, traveling around, doing a little light taxi duty and some visits around town while we're away. And I want to just record something for you to have some relatively fresh stories, but also some looks back. I mean, we'll take this opportunity to do that and look back at a few stories that came to mind as we were reviewing the current stories up to, let's say, including the attacks in the Caribbean, the Trump administration sicking the military on God knows what boats, but claiming they're all drug trafficking boats from out of Venezuela, but also in case they're not from out of Venezuela, they're out of somewhere else that we've totally always been at war with, don't you know? And some interesting facts that surfaced during that actually, as I'm recalling having read some of these things already and recorded some of this already, I'm doing this in reverse, through the magic of engineering. Some facts surfaced or some mentions surfaced that made me say, hey, wait a second, let me look back at some of these other stories. I actually started somewhere completely different, having seen a story, which I'll just launch right into it now, a story which brought back memories of an oldie but baddie. Hey, how about this for a blast from the past? I have a story that I've been sitting on for a little while, keeping it in Instapaper, and I'm going to have to read it to you from the Instapaper version because it is in Rolling Stone. And while, of course, well worth your time, not that easily accessible for those of you who are not subscribers. But Jacqueline Sweet for Rolling Stone on October 8th wrote an interesting piece, "The Viral MAGA Accounts Run by a Man Who Has Never Been to America." Well, okay, we understand that that's possible. After all, many, many moons ago, not only have we been seeing Russian disinformation for all this time and everybody else jumping into the act, but many, many moons ago, back when we were all young and naive and didn't think that, say, Donald Trump could be president. Or maybe we had just found out, oh my God, Donald Trump might actually become president. We had heard that, oddly enough, out of all the countries in the world where people were generating what was the original fake news before Donald Trump so rudely interdicted and stole the term and made it his own and decided that real news was going to be termed fake news for the purposes of his argument. We found out that there were Macedonians, in fact, Macedonian teenagers, apparently all over the internet, creating these essentially fake news sites, many of which were very, very stridently and over the top fashion pro-Trump, and were just generating things that were supposed to create clicks. There may or may not have been any ideological bent to the venture itself. It was just to get clicks and capture ad revenue. But they found that the things that created the most clicks among the Donald Trump fan base, who were most likely to click things blindly and idiotically, were over-the-top stories about, Hillary Clinton has pneumonia and is about to die, or Hillary Clinton is a total criminal and will die in prison. These sorts of things, which, of course, Trump people were actively claiming, but which they boosted and which they, in some cases, created out of thin air. And I think probably in hindsight, even encouraged Trump supporters here in the United States, when they saw such stories, to repeat such stories. And we wondered, why Macedonia and how did that even happen? And it was a very fascinating story. As a matter of fact, I went back and dug it up, but only after reading on in Jacqueline Sweet's story that, again, the viral MAGA accounts that were being run by a man who's never been to America, that man has been to Macedonia because he's Macedonian. And I thought, I can't believe the friggin' Macedonians are involved in this again. Where was that story that I went, how long ago was it? I know that there's not a lot of other mention of Macedonia on the show. So I went and dug it up, and I took a look in the Libsyn archives for it and found, I think, 2 stories in which we mentioned Macedonia. One from March of 2018. I'd like to go and see what story that is about. But the first was November 7th, 2016. And in that November 7th, 2016 story or episode, we had this in the summary. And I don't know, this is probably back when I was writing my own. Oh, no, I guess not. Actually, it looks to me like maybe Scott, were you already writing these things, or was somebody else writing these things? I can't even remember now how I had things arranged. But, well, we can look in the archives to try to find that out. But here it is. It is hard to trust intelligence officials when a guy who used to be the U.S. military's top intelligence official, and we're talking about Mike Flynn, official, passes along forward emails on Twitter, which are manufactured by teenagers in the Balkans. And of course, I said that's got to be it, right? Macedonia, even though we don't mention Macedonia outright in this summary, it turns out that's what it's linking to. Now, my question originally for myself was, all right, when I saw this story from Rolling Stone on Blue Sky a couple of days ago, I was like, I can't believe the Macedonians are at it again. And for those who don't remember, I thought I should include a link to a story about Macedonian teenagers generating these kinds of fake news sites. And I Googled something real quick, and I came up with a hit that, told the story, and I passed it along. And it was a BuzzFeed story from November 3rd, 2016, how teens in the Balkans are duping Trump supporters with fake news. And then in preparation for reading of this story, I said, I wonder what article I actually did use. This is why I went to the archives. What article did I actually use? I should just use that one again and call back to whatever episode it was, looked it up. There it was, November 7th, 2016. There's the teenagers in the Balkans. I clicked on it. Boom. It is the exact same BuzzFeed News article that I just grabbed randomly off of Google the other day to illustrate the fact that the Macedonians were back. So by way of refreshing your memory, I guess, before we read Jacqueline Sweet's piece, this is Craig Silverman and Lawrence Alexander in BuzzFeed on November 3rd, 2016. How teens in the Balkans are duping Trump supporters with fake news. Again, a refresher. BuzzFeed News identified more than 100 pro-Trump websites being run from a single town in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Weird, and I guess we'll find out if it's the same town and maybe even the same person. But back in 2016, it was reported this way. This is the news of the millennium, said the story on World Politic US. I guess looks like worldpoliticus.com, but I assume that they meant World Politic US, maybe. .com. We probably had that same hung up when we read it the first time. Citing unnamed FBI sources, it claimed Hillary Clinton will be indicted in 2017 for crimes related to her email scandal. Ironic, of course, now looking back on all of that and all the people who should by rights have been indicted for their email scandals and have since not been. Anyway, your prayers have been answered, declared the headline. For Trump supporters, that seemed to be the case. They helped the baseless story generate over 140,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. Meanwhile, roughly 6,000 miles away in a small town in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, a young man watched as money began trickling into his Google AdSense account. Over the past year, the Macedonian town of Veles, and maybe I don't know how it's pronounced, Veles, there doesn't appear to be any diacritical remarks on this. I don't know whether that's because they didn't know how to find them on the keyboard or there are none. I would guess Macedonia Velish, perhaps. I don't know, but Veles, population 45,000, has experienced a digital gold rush as locals launched at least 140 U.S. politics websites. These sites have American-sounding domain names such as World Politic US, I would guess. That would sound a lot more American-sounding than World Politicus or whatever. TrumpVision365.com. USConservativeToday.com, DonaldTrumpNews.co, and USADailyPolitics.com. They almost all publish aggressively pro-Trump content aimed at conservatives and Trump supporters in the U.S. The young Macedonians who run these sites say they don't care about Donald Trump. They are responding to straightforward economic incentives. As Facebook regularly reveals in earnings reports, a U.S. Facebook user is worth about 4 times a user outside the U.S. The fraction of a penny per click of U.S. display advertising, a declining market for American publishers, goes a long way in Velish, or whatever it might be. Several teens and young men who run these sites told BuzzFeed News that they learned the best way to generate traffic is to get their politics stories to spread on Facebook. And the best way to generate shares on Facebook is to publish sensationalist and often false content that caters to Trump supporters. As a result, this strange hub of pro-Trump sites in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia is now playing a significant role in propagating the kind of false and misleading content that was identified in a recent BuzzFeed News analysis, linked herein, of hyperpartisan Facebook pages. These sites open a window into the economic incentives behind producing misinformation, specifically for the wealthiest advertising markets and specifically for Facebook, the world's largest social network, at least at the time anyway, as well as within online advertising networks such as Google AdSense. Yes, the info in the blogs is bad, false, and misleading, but the rationale is that if it gets the people to click on it and engage, then use it, said a university student in Velish, who started a U.S. politics site and who agreed to speak on a condition that BuzzFeed News not use his name. So we'll never know unless somehow Jacqueline Sweet has figured it out in the Rolling Stone piece that this is or isn't the same person or one of the same people. Using domain registration records and online searches, BuzzFeed News identified over 100 active U.S. politic websites being run from Velish. The largest of these sites have Facebook pages that boast hundreds of thousands of followers. BuzzFeed News also identified another 40 U.S. politics domains registered by people in Velish that are no longer active. In an April report from the Macedonian website meta.mk, identified 6 pro-Trump sites being run from Velish. A Guardian report identified 150 politics sites. Interesting that the Macedonian website is meta.something, long before Facebook contemplated changing their name to Meta. I don't know. Their reasons for launching these sites are purely financial, according to the Macedonians with whom BuzzFeed News spoke. I wonder, by the way, does Trump mistreat Macedonia or does he favor Macedonia? I'm not really sure where he stands on that. It'd be interesting if they did this and said, hey, we don't even care one way or the other about Donald Trump, and then it ended up damaging the country or its economic conditions terribly. Much like being a farmer here in the United States. Anyway, their reasons for launching the sites are purely financial, according to these Macedonians with whom BuzzFeed News spoke. I started the site for an easy way to make money, said a 17-year-old who runs a site with 4 other people. In Macedonia, the economy is very weak, and teenagers are not allowed to work, so we need to find creative ways to make some money. I'm a musician, but I can't afford music gear. Here in Macedonia, the revenue from a small site is enough to afford many things. Most of the posts on these sites are aggregated or completely plagiarized from fringe and right-wing sites in the U.S. And I would imagine that generative AI just simply eliminates the need to have any skill whatsoever, either from plagiarizing or cobbling together or aggregating things. You can just create your own new content with garbage. Anyway, at the time, they were either aggregated or completely plagiarized from fringe and right-wing sites in the U.S., so that's how they got an idea of what Trumpers wanted to hear. The Macedonians see a story elsewhere, write a sensationalized headline, and quickly post it to their site. Then they share it on Facebook and try to generate traffic. The more people who click through from Facebook, the more money they earn from ads on their website. Earlier in the year, some in Velish experimented with left-leaning and pro-Bernie Sanders content, but nothing performed as well on Facebook as Trump content. And we kind of all now just inherently know why. People in America prefer to read news about Trump, said a Macedonian 16-year-old who operates bvanews.com. BuzzFeed News' research also found that the most successful stories from these sites were nearly all false or misleading. For example, the most successful post BuzzFeed News found from a Macedonian site is based on a story from a fake news website. They stole it from another fake one and put it on their fake one. Okay? The headline in the story was from conservativestate.com, and it was Hillary Clinton in 2013, I would like to see people I would like to see people like Donald Trump run for office. They're honest and can't be bought, unquote. That's okay. It's an intriguing headline, to be sure. The post is a week old. Back then it was, and has racked up an astounding 480,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. To put that into perspective, the New York Times' exclusive story that revealed Donald Trump declared a $916 million loss on his 1995 income tax returns generated a little more than 175,000 Facebook interactions in a month. So, much more popular to just do the fake stuff. The viral Clinton story was sourced from therightists.com, a site that admits it publishes both real and fake content. According to emails released by WikiLeaks, Clinton said in a private speech to Goldman Sachs that she would like to see more successful business people enter politics, but she did not mention Donald Trump in any way. The quote used in the headline is false. 4 of the 5 most successful posts from the Macedonian sites BuzzFeed News identified are false. They include the false claim that the Pope endorsed Trump, the false claim that Mike Pence said Michelle Obama is, quote, the most vulgar first lady we've ever had, unquote. Those 4 posts together generated more than 1 million shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. That resulted in huge traffic and significant ad revenues for the owners of these sites, with many people being misinformed along the way. The Macedonians BuzzFeed News spoke to said the explosion in pro-Trump sites in Veleš means the market has now become more crowded, making it harder to earn money. The people who launched their sites in early 2016 are making the most money, according to the university student. He said a friend of his earns $5,000 per month or even $3,000 per day when he gets a hit on Facebook. He's kicking our ass here. The 16-year-old who operates BVAnews.com with a partner said he also runs health websites in addition to the U.S. politics site, eminently qualified for both, of course. Might as well be Secretary of HHS here in the United States. They launched the site in early 2016, and now it's averaging 1 million page views per month, said his partner. The teens declined to share revenue figures. The 17-year-old and his 3 partners are still waiting for Google AdSense's program to approve their site for ads. As of now, they're only generating about 800 views a day, and they aren't earning any revenue. The university student launched his site in August and stopped updating it in order to focus on another more successful site he's had that focused on health and well-being. Oh, you good. He estimated there are thousands of health-related sites being run out of Veleš. U.S. politics is just this year's opportunity, thanks to a combination of Trump and Facebook. I stopped because I didn't really enjoy doing it, and we didn't actually make any money from it since there are so many people posting already, the university student said. The people who started early are the ones reaping the rewards. Aside from the allure of easy money, they also have an element of pride that web-savvy people, including teenagers, in a small country like Macedonia can earn money by gaming Facebook, Google, and Americans. A good chunk of the world thinks Macedonia is primitive, but that's not true, said the 17-year-old. The young men running these sites know the Trump traffic bonanza will soon come to an end. It didn't. They expect traffic and revenue to decline significantly once the election is over, but they also hold out that hope that Trump will win and keep their sites afloat. Well, they got it. If Trump loses, I plan to redirect my site to sports, the 16-year-old's partner said. I mean, that there will be no more politics worth covering. Well, guess what? So here we are in 2025, looking at a new story in Rolling Stone, again by Jacqueline Sweet. The title this time, The Viral MAGA Accounts Run by a Man Who Has Never Been to America. Let's see what we have here. The right-wing information sphere on social media is shaped by large, often anonymous influencer accounts that are then amplified to even wider audiences by prominent conservatives. 2 such accounts are Defiant L's and Resist the Mainstream, both offering takes on American politics, often alleging corruption and election fraud by Democrats, to a combined over 2 million followers. Republican lawmakers like Mike Lee, Nancy Mace, Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, and Dan Crenshaw. What a lineup. Along with major political figures like Elon Musk, who really isn't and shouldn't be a political figure, share the account's posts on X, sometimes claiming that, quote, illegals or undocumented immigrants are fraudulently voting in American elections. The owner and operator of both accounts, however, is not only a man who has, by his own admission, never stepped foot in the United States, but has donated over $3,000 in an American election. That's supposed to be illegal, of course. Donating to American political campaigns as a foreign national is a federal crime, according to the Federal Election Commission. Rumen Naumovsky, that's Rumen and Naumovski, Rumen Naumovsky, donated to Ron Watkins' congressional campaign in Arizona in 2022 while living in Macedonia as a Macedonian national, according to FEC documents listing his name and a Florida media company that he owns, along with a review of his own statements detailing his attempts to immigrate to America. He runs Defiant L's and Resist the Mainstream via that same Florida company, according to court documents and his statement, and someone with knowledge of his company. Watkins later returned the donations, and Naumovsky said he was unaware he was prohibited from donating. Defiant L's, and it's just L''S, Defiant L's and Resist the Mainstream are two major players in the right-wing influencer space on X and cover American politics almost exclusively. Defiant L's, in particular, enjoys a major reach on the platform thanks to elected officials and Musk, who called Defiant L's one of the best accounts on X last year. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace has shared multiple posts from the account and even replied to Defiant L's last month on a post about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar that asked, "What's the first thought that comes to mind when you see Ilhan Omar?" "Censure," Mace replied. Utah Senator Mike Lee often shares Defiant L's posts, and in March tagged FBI Director Kash Patel and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino in one reshare. Lee also interacts with Resist the Mainstream at least 5 times this year, based on a review by Rolling Stone. Naumovsky has been managing Defiant L's via a Florida company since 2023, according to a source with knowledge of the account. Before I go on, it just struck me as I was reading it. It sounds like it's not such a big deal. Well, Mike Lee also interacts with Resist the Mainstream 5 times this year based on a review. I don't know whether that's retweeting or liking their tweets or responding to their tweets. But I'm just pointing out, do you know any average constituent of Utah who can say, yeah, I've had 5 interactions with my senator this year or ever in my life, but this Macedonian guy has 5 of them just this year. Like, he's paying more attention to what some rando in Macedonia is saying than to what you're saying. I mean, his job is to pay attention to what you're saying. It's his job. He's just ignoring his job to do this. He likes this better. All right. Well, he's been managing Defiant L via this Florida company since 2023. Naumovsky wrote this year that Defiant L's is one of our accounts in an opinion piece for the Daily Wire. He's got opinion pieces in the Daily Wire as well. Jeez. How many of Mike Lee's constituents have that? He uses the same Florida company to run Resist the Mainstream's website and accounts, according to court documents. The 2 accounts are listed as affiliates of each other on X, a paid feature that allows a business to link more than one account with verified affiliate badges. A year before obtaining Defiant L's, Naumovsky donated $3,127 in 2 donations to so-called QAnon candidate Ron Watkins' congressional primary race in Arizona. Naumovsky was reported at the time as being Watkins' largest single donor that quarter. But that was years before it became known that Naumovsky wasn't just of Macedonian origin, but has never had residential status in the U.S. or even been to the U.S., according to his Daily Wire op-ed. I run a growing media company with 11 American employees. I've invested over $145,000 in the U.S. economy. I mean, is that really a lot? I pay American corporate taxes, yet I've never set foot in the United States, and government bureaucrats seem determined to keep it that way, Naumovsky wrote in February. He explained that he attempted to get a tourist visa in 2018, but was rejected. Oh, under Trump? You're kidding. No way. And then his reapplication was approved in 2021. Oh, you mean under Biden? No kidding. But Naumovsky said he refused to show proof of COVID vaccination as required in 2021. As a healthy young person, I hesitated. Friends here offered an easy solution. Fake vaccination cards cost less than $50 in Macedonia, but I refused to begin my American journey with a lie. How long could waiting honestly really take? He then tried for an E-2 business visa, but was rejected after repeated interviews by embassy staff, he claims in the piece, and to this day has never been to the U.S. In a podcast interview in October of 2022, a few months after he donated to Watkins, he explained he was currently running his media company that he started in his bedroom in his parents' home from my own apartment in Macedonia. Foreign nationals are categorically barred from spending money in our elections, whether it's directly, via PACs, or even super PACs. Saurav Ghosh, Director of Federal Campaign Finance Reform at the Campaign Legal Center and former counsel at the FEC, tells Rolling Stone. Ghosh says that foreign donation schemes often happen via straw donors or fake names, which are also prohibited, and that a foreign national donating under their own name is rare. Filings from a 2024 copyright lawsuit brought by a photojournalist who alleged Resist the Mainstream's repeatedly stole his work show that Naumovsky claims 100% ownership of the Florida company that operates the 2X accounts, Raw Digital, with 2 W's, RAWW, Raw Digital LLC. The two Watkins donations both list the St. Petersburg, Florida Registered Agent's Office, where Raw Digital Inc. is located, and Raw Digital LLC as Naumovsky's employer. The company was first registered in 2021 with Naumovsky as sole owner, with an address in, you'll never guess, North Macedonia, true, but Velish, North Macedonia, same effing town. I'll bet you anything this is one of the original dudes. I don't know whether we're ever going to get more information about these people, but I'll bet this has just got to be the same crowd of people. Velish, Macedonia, how big can it be? But yeah, my bet would be these are the same people who did this the last time, resurfacing once again. And why not? It's been profitable all along. All right, we'll be back after this 2-minute break to tell you more of this story. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We left off just before the break, marveling at the fact that this new story about fake news sites and fake content slop from Macedonia all turns out to be from Velish, Macedonia, once again, just as it was back in 2016, and noting, just to rejoin the Rolling Stone piece here and the train of thought that led us to it, we were learning that filings from a 2024 copyright lawsuit brought by a photojournalist who alleged Resist the Mainstream repeatedly stole his work show that Naumovsky claims 100% ownership of the Florida company that operates the 2X accounts, Raw Digital LLC. 2 W's in Raw Digital LLC, remember? The two Watkins donations both list that St. Petersburg, Florida Registered Agent's Office where Raw Digital is located, and Raw Digital LLC as Naumovsky's employer. Then we found out that the company was first registered in 2021 with Naumovsky as the sole owner with an address in Veles, North Macedonia. Okay, so a month later, an amendment with a new principal address was filed at the registered agent's office in St. Petersburg. Watkins is often speculated to be a source for the writings of Q, the mysterious figure fueling QAnon conspiracies for years. Watkins has long denied being Q. Watkins lost the Arizona primary to Eli Crane, who has himself since amplified Naumovsky's content at least 7 times. After Naumovsky donated to Watkins, Watkins boosted Resist the Mainstream's Telegram channel a week later, according to a screenshot obtained by Media Matters. And as we're saying it, and now we're repeating the guy's name, Watkins, isn't he one of the guys who was behind the original 4chan, or was it maybe one of the derivatives of 4chan, the 8chan, or the whatever horrible, basket of deplorables chan it was? I think so. And wasn't he also, before running for Congress in Arizona, living overseas for years? And I don't know, just a weird swamp of oddity, to say the least. And naturally, these two would have found each other. There is no indication of wrongdoing by Watkins or that he was aware of Naumovsky's location at the time. Doesn't even matter. He was living like in Indonesia the whole time, wasn't he? Watkins refunded Naumovsky's 2 donations in April of 2022, as campaign finance law requires if a candidate unknowingly receives a donation from a foreign national. The FEC sent Watkins a letter in March of 2022, a month after Naumovsky's donations, asking for more information about donors, after the campaign submitted a report with incomplete donor information. Naumovsky told Rolling Stone he was unaware that it was illegal to donate to an American campaign without a green card. He posted a statement in April of 2022 on his Telegram channel about the incident. Yesterday, I learned I made a mistake. I gave an online contribution to a U.S. political campaign, not realizing that was forbidden to me as someone who had a U.S. visa but not a green card. A visa, really? That's all you think you need? Within minutes of learning that, I contacted the campaign, which is immediately refunding my payment. I love America and would never intentionally violate any measure. Live and learn. Okay. Watkins told Rolling Stone in an email that he does not recall Naumovsky's donations. My 2022 Arizona campaign was very busy and ended more than 3 years ago. According to the FEC guidelines, federal campaign records have a 3-year retention period. It has been more than 3 years since the campaign ended. The 3-year retention period for campaign records has passed, and I do not personally remember details about specific donations. As far as I know, there was no FEC investigation into this specific issue that you are alleging. By the way, I took a look to see if I could remember what refresh my memory of what the Ron Watkins connection was. Ron Watkins is the son of Jim Watkins. It is Jim Watkins who ran 8chan / I think they also called, or I don't know whether it's the same place or an affiliated 8kun, Kun. But anyway, one of the most serious deplorables of all. And, so his son, Ron, running for Congress in Arizona, and naturally would hook up with a guy like this who may or may not actually care about the content of what he's publishing, but it would certainly be among the most lucrative things you could do if you're going to establish a relationship with an American politician. It would have to be one of the QAnon bent types who would reshare your craziness, this time with the imprimatur of the U.S. Congress attached to it, and it would only generate more money for you, I assume was the plan. All right. Now, the Media Matters 2023 review found that Watkins was only one of several QAnon-linked influencers to share Resist the Mainstream's content, and the content appeared nearly identical. Some ex-users have alleged that they were approached by Naumovsky to post his content for payment. Naumovsky did not respond to a follow-up question for Rolling Stone about whether he offered Watkins or other influencers payments to promote his company's content, nor did he respond to questions about how he learned his donations were illegal. A major booster of Naumovsky's career is former Fox News executive Ken LaCorte. No one can believe it. Fox News. LaCorte admitted to the New York Times in 2019 that he hired Macedonian teenagers from Veles. Oh, all right, mystery solved. Naumovsky's Macedonian hometown, to write for several conservative content sites that he began running in 2017. Veles is known as the, quote, home to a collection of writers who churned out disinformation during the 2016 presidential election in the United States, the Times reported. Lacourt has also written about Naumovsky's struggles to emigrate. I met Rumen when I was running a startup and I needed help with social media. When we first spoke on Zoom, I was surprised to learn he was still a teenager living in Macedonia, a country I couldn't find without a good map, working out of a bedroom covered in LA Lakers posters. Oh, I wonder, would he have been the teenager who was thinking if it didn't work out with Donald Trump, he would change over to sports coverage? It starts to sound that way, doesn't it? Since then, I've been both a friend and an advisor, helping him build his business and encouraging him through the United States immigration system. He wrote on his Substack in February, a few days after Naumovsky himself admitted he's never been to the U.S. And here, let me just take another pause and see if I can find this. We mentioned that there was, I was thinking that there was the New York Times reported on this stuff. I think they said in 2019, and I was just wondering, was the other date that came up with on my Macedonia search also in 2019? Were we just covering the update of that story or what? Let me see if I can't find, no, this is from 2018. So I'm not really sure what the, why Macedonia would have come up at that point, but it did, but perhaps we can investigate that at some future date. All right, back to this story. If he had simply walked across the border illegally, he would have received a work permit within months. Oh God, this is Ken LaCourte from Fox saying he could have easily gamed the system, faked paperwork, overstayed a tourist visa, or lost his passport. But because he played by the rules, he's been stuck in limbo for years, LaCourte wrote. Oh, too bad. Just stuck in Macedonia, earning money for nothing. Naumovsky has enjoyed connections with other Republican activists such as Roger Stone, who endorsed him in 2023 on X. I highly recommend that you follow Rumen Naumovsky, the founder of Resist the Mainstream, on Twitter. He's a great guy. He was born outside the U.S., but he loves America, and he's working hard to bring trusted news to everyday people. He's really not either bringing trusted news or working hard. He's making up the news. Before this year's revelations, Naumovsky himself repeated a similarly vague biography. I was born overseas, but have devoted my life to spreading the virtues of American freedom. You could say that. He wrote on X, the issue of foreign interests influencing American politics through anonymous ex-influencer accounts is an ongoing one. Last year, federal prosecutors alleged that the conservative media company Tenet, which pays a network of major right-wing influencers like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, was secretly being paid by Russian state operatives to disseminate propaganda to a large American audience. Johnson, Pool, and other Tenet content creators maintained they were unaware of the alleged Russian influence campaign and were victims of deceptions. Interfering in American elections financially, however, is still one of the campaign finance violations that's taken seriously and prosecuted. Ghosh says, this is one of our bedrock campaign finance laws to keep American elections working toward the goals of American public welfare and not the opposite. Oh, well, I guess, the end result of that is a sad trombone sound effect. It doesn't seem to be working very well, but just wanted you to know, the Macedonians, I guess you could say they're back, except they really, legitimately, honestly, literally never left. And I don't just mean that they never left Macedonia. Hey, while we're at it, do you want to hear something really wild? I went and I looked at the March 27, 2018 summary of the show back then and found, looking for some mention of Macedonia. There was no mention in the summary of Macedonia in the previous one, but I found the link that led to the story. I haven't found a link among the many in this one that leads to anything about Macedonia, though some of them are paywalled and they might have mentioned Macedonia in the text that we linked to. But guess what I found along the way? I'm going to bring you back a couple of days now to Friday's show, when we mentioned and had various troubles with discussing the situation in Trinidad and Tobago, or Tobago, and never really figuring out how that was pronounced. But noting along the way that while there were Trinidadians on the latest or one of the boats blown up by the U.S. military, allegedly for carrying drugs out of Venezuela, and of course all the claims that everybody on board was Venezuelan, and they were all gang members, except some of them were Trinidadians, and we wondered how that was going over in Trinidad. And then we read that weirdly, for some reason, the Prime Minister of Trinidad was like, no, this is great. We should be blowing up boats left and right. In fact, kill them as violently as possible. And we thought, that's weird, but wasn't it also weird to find out that the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the opposition leader in Venezuela, also likewise was praising the idea of the United States bigfooting the entirety of the hemisphere again and blowing up boats willy-nilly. And isn't that odd? And can you explain it? And golly, you just never know what might be, what the conditions are on the ground and what people are dealing with. But could there be other explanations? Certainly there could, but, we didn't know where to start in digging this up. Well, I went to look at that March 27th, 2018 summary and clicked through on a couple of links, including, I don't remember which one this was, but basically, let me give you the summary because it was a very short one. If Scott did it, he did it real quick in about 2 paragraphs. David Waldman, this is how I know he did it rather than me, brings us day 2, I guess we were in the second day, of KITM's special report on Cambridge Analytica. You remember them, of course. The psychographic sensation sweeping the world with many new branches, including Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. Oh, I should read about that one because Argentina. And other hotspots throughout Latin America. CA's tentacles reached into the 2006 Latvian election, the 2007 Nigerian election, elections in Trinidad and Tobago. Holy mackerel. Like, I didn't expect to see that come up again. That was in 2010, though, so it was a little earlier than we're talking about. And what do you know? Roy Moore's Alabama Senate race in 2017. So, wow, there was that. There's another paragraph here. By the way, no one can pretend Facebook is just harmless fun anymore. We knew that early on. Facebook knows it all about you, about everyone you know, and sold it all because that's what they do. And by the way, gay Canadian vegan Christopher Wiley, remember him? He was one of the whistleblowers from CA, was just a nice guy trying to make an evil buck by helping create Stephen K.G. Bannon's psychological warfare mind F tool. David, that's me, traces Cambridge Analytica's history from NSA wet dream to electing Donald Trump to eventually destroying us all by design. Well, so I clicked on the Trinidad and Tobago entry, 2010. It brought me to a not all that helpful but interesting enough site, Daily Express. It's and you'll find it online as trinidadexpress.com. I think, it's a little rickety as news websites go, but it brought me to this story from March 24th, 2018 by Asha Javid, which began to tip me to some of the demographics that were of interest in Trinidad, which actually kind of helped explain what was going on. But here's the title of the piece, and it's short and awkward and weird and not that helpful, but Buying Data in Trinidad, How Cambridge Analytica Did It. Well, I don't even know if we actually learned how of anything, but here's how the story goes. In December of 2017, the Sunday Express began an investigation which uncovered that several data mining operations took place between 2010 and 2015, facilitated by politicians with the cost being borne by taxpayers. And I guess that was supposed to be the scandal of it all. But 2010 in Trinidad politics, why, that's something. Well, we said earlier in the summary that it said that Cambridge Analytica's tentacles reached into the elections in Trinidad and Tobago in 2010, which is just the period we're talking about all of a sudden. Okay, tell me more. In its first installment, the Sunday Express revealed that UK pollster Sir Robert Worcester, maybe, I don't know whether they say Worcester like they do when they are talking about the place called and spelled Worcester, but is he Sir Robert Worcester? I don't know. Well, he was paid a monthly consultancy fee from the Office of the Prime Minister there in Trinidad of 10,000 US dollars. Apparently that is 64,500 or was 64,500 Trinidadian dollars, I guess. It says TT, Trinidad and Tobago, $64. Okay. For 2 years. $10,000 for each of 2 years or twice in each year. I don't know. From 2013 through 2015, while he mainly operated out of his UK home, Allington Castle, for God's sake, in Kent. Okay. It was a 2-year project and the costs covered 13 surveys, 7 focus groups, the core consultancy, and Wooster and his 3-member team's travel expenses. And then that's basically all that's left here in this article. I don't know whether there was originally more. The rest of it is, ad service generated garbage. So there's no more information, but it got me thinking and it got me clicking on some other things, including going to Wikipedia to read a little bit about Cambridge Analytica and Trinidad, which brought me to Wikipedia's page on Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. There's a section here, interfering in the elections of Trinidad and Tobago. In the Caribbean country of Trinidad and Tobago, the majority of the population, you need this background, I didn't know this, is divided or subdivided into 2 groups, those of South Asian and African origin. Those are the 2 major ethnic groups. The South Asian population constitutes the largest ethnic group in the country, approximately 35.4%. Mainly descendants of indentured workers from South Asia, mostly India, brought in to replace freed African slaves who refused to continue working on the sugar plantations there. And can you blame them? Through cultural preservation, many residents of Indian descent continue to maintain the traditions of their ancestral homeland. On the other hand, the African population constitute the second largest ethnic group in the country, with approximately 34.2% of the population identifying themselves as of African descent. So that's 35.4% mostly South Asian Indian and 34.2% mostly of African descent. Next, in 2010, Cambridge Analytica designed a campaign called Do So. I think it's Do So as opposed to Do So. As from what I can tell, I've seen it illustrated with a graphic representation of 2 black clenched fists crossed, like forearms and fists crossed in an X, like do so. In other words, do this, like don't participate and don't vote. Because as you'll see, the campaign was aimed at trying to increase abstention among young people of African descent. That is, I think they mean abstention from voting. But, not sure yet. This campaign, presented as if it were something that arose spontaneously on social media, AstroTurf, was developed as a resistance movement against traditional politics, encouraging young people not to vote as a form of protest. That's the abstention they're talking about. So that by reducing their electoral participation, it favored the United National Congress, or UNC, the party representing the Indian population. The Do So campaign had a significant impact on reducing voter turnout among people of African descent, which contributed to the UNC's electoral victory in 2010. Exactly the period we were talking about. And that got me to wondering, so we were just reading about the very odd thing of the Trinidadian prime minister actually being excited about these weird Trumpian attacks in the Caribbean. What was that person's name again? So I looked, hey, Wikipedia, you got to ask Wikipedia. You can't ask AI these things. Who's the prime minister of Trinidad again? And here it is. It's Kamala. Remember Kamala? And I said, I didn't say it out loud on Friday when we were talking about it, but I was like, Kamala. Oh, that's interesting. Like Kamala. This is Kamala. Kamala Persad Bissessar, I guess, Bissessar. That's 4 S's in there. And I wondered, but just briefly, and I thought, I don't know. And I don't know anything about the demographics of Trinidad, so this never occurred to me. But yeah, well, once you see the photo, it becomes fairly clear. Kamala Sushila Persad Bisesar, SCMP. Just in case you wanted to know, I guess, what titles follow her. I guess MP, Member of Parliament. What's SC? Senior Counsel. I don't know how their government works. But at any rate, she's often referred to by her initials, KPB, is a Trinidadian lawyer, politician, and educator who has twice served as the 6th Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago from 2010 to 2015, and again since May 2025. That really is something. Isn't that interesting that in 2010, the all of a sudden odd beneficiary of Cambridge Analytica interference in the elections of Trinidad and Tobago is this one Kamla Persad Bisesar, who takes over as Prime Minister and then stays as Prime Minister for, 5 years or so. That's not a short stint. Then is out of office and then is returned, though, in May of 2025, not unlike Donald Trump, has 2 stints in office, but happens to be back in office in time to be the person reacting from the Trinidadian side of this attack on what was allegedly a Venezuelan boat, and still saying, this is great. We should absolutely be killing people with as much violence as possible, even if it turns out they're Trinidadian. That's odd, except that they appear to spring from the same well in many ways. Don't you think that's kind of interesting? Let me just skip down here to the political career, just for a brief informational session. It begins in 1987 when she entered politics, serving as an alderwoman in the St. Patrick County Council until 1991, became an opposition senator from 1994 to 95, then became a member of parliament for the Siparia constituency in 1995 and has been ever since. She's served as Attorney General in 95 under Ramesh Maharaj, was able to disassociate him until he was able to disassociate himself from ongoing cases, and again in 2001 after Maharaj left the party. So that's something to read about too. When the UNC formed government on December 22nd, 2000, she was sworn in as Minister of Education. From there, advancements through the ranks, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, any other interesting stuff? We'll just read through it. April 25th, 2006. She received the support of the majority of opposition MPs for the post of Leader of the Opposition. The position of Leader of the Opposition was declared vacant by President George Maxwell Richards after Basdeo Panday was convicted of failing to make an accurate declaration to the Integrity Commission concerning a bank account he held in London. A little bit of corruption surrounding the whole thing. Persad Bisesar was subsequently appointed Leader of the Opposition on April 26th of 2006. Then, January 24th, 2010, Kamla Persad Bisesar elected political leader of the UNC, emerging victorious over the party's founder and former Prime Minister, Basdeo Panday. Again, she was formally appointed opposition leader on February 25th, 2010, having gained the support of a majority of UNC MPs. And next up, Prime Ministership. Persad Bisesar took office as Prime Minister after the victory of the People's Partnership in the general election of May 24th, 2010, defeating the previous government, mysteriously enough, of the People's National Movement, which had called an early election. Her election campaign has been analyzed as a successful attempt to bring together people with different ethnic backgrounds, yay, and ideological affiliations under female leadership. Not bad, right? Not a bad idea, certainly. Before they decided DEI was bad. I wonder where she is on that now. She was the first female Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and is also the first female Commonwealth chairperson in office. You tell me what that means, English people. She was succeeded as chairperson in office by Julia Gillard with the opening of the 2011, CHOGM. You tell me what that's all about, in October of 2011. So she then moved on to be Leader of the Opposition when they were replaced, and now is back in her second term as Prime Minister, having been the leader of her party for 15 years. She led her party to the 2025 Trinidad and Tobago general election with the Coalition of Interests. She declared a landslide victory, I know that trick, and became the Prime Minister-elect on April 28, 2025, with the UNC winning an estimated 26 of the 41 seats in the House of Representatives. Persad Bissessar campaigned on increasing public sector salaries. That wouldn't fly in MAGA world. Protecting pensions and reopening the state oil company Petrotrin. She was sworn in as prime minister on May 1st. So nothing in the domestic politics that screams MAGA, except the weird insistence that Trump was right to attack these boats, and the weird coincidence of both having been legitimized more or less as national politicians in their respective countries after association with Cambridge Analytica and then an electoral miracle of some kind appearing from out of nowhere. I just thought, you might find that interesting. It may be that there's really nothing serious there. It's just odd that in the space of a couple of days, I'm having to check the behind the scenes of Trinidadian politics just to try to figure out what the hell is going on here. And I guess that means we owe ourselves a deep dive one day into Venezuelan opposition politics as well. I don't know. I just thought you might find it interesting. And today's as good a day as any to bring it forward. All right. So maybe there is a little bit more that we need to talk about when discussing the background of Trinidadian Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessar. And I've got a little bit more material to share with you. I think it's going to take us to the other side of the break. But for the moment, I thought I would start with the beginning of a piece from the Jamaica Gleaner, the Jamaican newspaper, on Trinidad, as it says here, doubles down on position regarding U.S. military presence in the region. A recent meeting of the Caribbean Community Nations, heads of state, getting together to discuss how to react to this Trump military attacks on boats off the coast of Venezuela. There's a lot to get your head around here. Trinidad doubles down on its position, though, regarding the U.S. military presence in the region. What's this about? Trinidad and Tobago on Sunday reiterated its reason for standing apart from its CARICOM neighbors in declining to back a regional position on key security and regional stability issues, including the growing presence of the United States military in the region. It's confounding, I think, to the rest of the Caribbean community that this one, and I guess maybe there are some others as well who stand apart, but Trinidad and Tobago, very obviously so. And she offers a statement, and CARICOM offers a response as well. It's just really interesting. So, okay, they've doubled down on this, and they say they're standing apart from the rest of the heads of state of the region in this. But yet there's still more history with this prime minister and MAGA. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and let me offer you at least a little sampling of what I found in the Jamaica Gleaner. I began by giving you the headline: Trinidad now doubling down on the position regarding U.S. military presence in the region. In a statement, I guess in response to that, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs said the Kamla Persad Bissessar-led government wishes to once more categorically express its strong support for the ongoing military intervention of the United States of America in the region. I guess that's the Trinidadian Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. I thought it might be CARICOM's Foreign Affairs, but no. These operations aimed at combating narco and human trafficking and other forms of transnational crime are ultimately aimed at allowing the region to be a true, quote, zone of peace, where all citizens can in reality live and work in a safe environment, the statement said. That sounds nice, but, blowing up boats, how is that zone of peace? Well, I do note that Trinidad, according to other, my skimming of the papers of late, has had some trouble with crime, a crime wave. Basically, it's more serious crime, more violent crime, more murders, and I'm sure I'm sure they're looking to cast blame all over the place for this thing. The question is what sort of impact might that have on their domestic politics. Now, I'll read on here. On Saturday, and this is a October 19th piece, so Saturday would have been the 18th. On Saturday, the Guyana-based CARICOM Secretariat said that CARICOM leaders had met to discuss several issues on the regional agenda, including the security buildup in parts of the Caribbean and its potential impact on member states. It said that the position at the meeting was not endorsed by the government of the Twin Island Republic, this one being Trinidad and Tobago. There are others. The meeting followed a series of deadly strikes by the Donald Trump administration targeting suspected drug trafficking vessels off the Venezuelan coast, the latest of which reportedly claimed the lives of 2 Trinidad and Tobago nationals. Save in respect of Trinidad and Tobago, who reserved its position, heads, that is the heads of state at the meeting, agreed on the following. They reaffirmed the principle of maintaining the Caribbean region as a zone of peace. It is the Trinidadian government thinks that blowing up the boats is what makes it a real zone of peace, but okay. They continue, though, CARICOM, in saying the importance of dialogue and engagement toward the peaceful resolution of disputes and conflict. CARICOM remains willing to assist toward that objective. Kind of standard diplomatic language. It's just, I don't know. It's very odd and weird that Trinidad stands out in this way. And later on in the article, basically, they restate what it was that the prime minister had said. Basically, that was, the slaughter of our people is fueled by evil cartel traffickers. The pain and suffering the cartels have inflicted on our nation is immense. I have no sympathy for traffickers. The U.S. military should kill them all violently, she said in a statement last month. So I was a little curious about what might be driving that, and are they really having that big of a crime problem? Is it fair to say that there's more to this prime minister's relationship with Trump and MAGA than just having allegedly shared the use of Cambridge Analytica to produce an electoral miracle that made them, both Trump and Prasad Bisesar, viable national candidates in the first place? And I wasn't sure. However, in just searching around, I came upon another article in the Trinidad Daily Express, which was, again, a little wonky in terms of its website. But there's also another one from the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian. I don't know anything about either paper. They're both sort of similarly wonky, and they're both covering the same event here. Kamla Prasad Bisesar's campaign to regain control of government from the position of the opposition leader at the beginning of last year. Do I have that right? The beginning of this year. January 21st, 2025, essentially a reaction to the inauguration of Donald Trump as she's in the full throes, I guess, of the campaign there. Remember, she is elected and sworn in as prime minister elected in late April, sworn in early May of this year. So anyway, these two papers cover the same statement, but excerpt it differently. So in combination, I wanted to read you what I've got from these two papers. Kamala doubles down. This is another headline of double down on condemnation of Biden administration is the Daily Express headline. The Guardian headline, Kamala doubles down. Same usage. Ready for this one? End woke far left extreme insanity. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think there's a tropical storm or tropical depression forming in the Caribbean here. So let's see. The introductory language, I think, from The Guardian is helpful here, which says opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesar has doubled down on her controversial statements about the Joe Biden administration, which she called a disaster. In a statement, Prasad Bisesar said, "People want common sense policies and equal opportunities based on merit, excellence, and intelligence, and are fed up with woke, far-left, nonsensical policies that are based on the use of identity politics moral superiority, and division, which I must say is a rather remarkable thing to say as the head of what essentially comes down to, it's looking more and more, and this is, I'm a total outsider and a total stranger to the politics, but looking more and more at it, it looks to me like essentially Trinidadian politics is contested as between ethnic political parties. The UNC, Persad Bissessar's party, dominated by the Indo-Caribbean community, and I don't even remember the name of the PNM, is it? The opposition party now, previously the ruling party in Trinidad, which appears to be largely the Afro-Trinidadian base of the country. And, well, it's a little weird, and I'm beginning to suspect that maybe there's more to this MAGA affinity than I thought. And it may be racial in nature. I'm just not sure. I may be laying too much on her shoulders, but I'll tell you why I think so. So as she says, and I got to switch back and forth between the reports here because there was a bit from the Express here that was introductory, I think, to the statement that they issued as a written statement. But okay, so in this statement, Persad Bissar says, hey, no more of this woke stuff. She said she has held these views since 2020, when she began advocating against what she called far left extreme insanity. And I don't know what to tell you. I didn't think they had, like, are these their daily troubles in Trinidad and Tobago? All right, here's the rest of the written statement they got issued. It's time for the world to move on from the insanity and destructive, divisive politics of the Joe Biden Democrat administration. I firmly stand by my comments regarding the Joe Biden administration. I believe the previous administration was an absolute disaster. The PNM and other critics have come out supporting the Joe Biden administration. Imagine that. She then called out the PNM and those criticizing her over their support of several policies under the Biden administration. And she listed them. And I want to take a look again at the way the Daily Express phrased it in introducing the list. Okay. I firmly stand by my comments. I believe the previous administration, absolute disaster. They've come out, the opposition has come out supporting Joe Biden. Therefore, the PNM and my critics should tell the country if they support these, which occurred under the Joe Biden administration. Now, it's crazy. This is a crazy ass list for any American MAGA person to put forward, in the sense that, they'd be perfectly in keeping with MAGA politics. It would just be crazy because we'd say, oh my God, another one of these crazy uncle lunatics. To say this running for parliament and prime ministership in Trinidad, okay, you guys, somebody else will have to tell me whether or not it's a huge problem in Trinidad for things like, number one, this is her list of complaints. Why you need to, replace the PNM with the UNC. 1, tampons in teenage boys' bathrooms. Holy cow, right out of the gate. Number 2, big problem all over Trinidad, I'm sure. Puberty blockers for teens without parental consent. Number 3, gender reassignment surgery for children. Number 4, sexualization and grooming of children under the guise of human rights. Number 5, adult men in the same public washrooms as little girls and women. Number 6, drag queen shows in schools and libraries in front of kids. Number 7, biological men participating in women's sports. Number 8, by the way, just to shift gears, because so far those are the top 7 problems in the world today. By the way, number 8, the slaughter of 18,000 children in Gaza. But just to get back to really important stuff, number 9 is gender pronouns. I would put those two together, wouldn't you? Number 10, forced health mandates. Question mark. I don't know what that is, but now I'm hearing it as Jukebox Heroes in my head. Forced health mandates. Don't do this at home, but now you are. Number 11, defunding the police, which actually looks pretty smart at this point. Number 12, the removal of religion from schools. Number 13, the persecution of persons for holding to their religious beliefs. Number 14, cancel culture. Number 15, virtue signaling. I'm so mad about that one. Number 16, social media shadow banning. I mean, Trinidad. I thought, might go there for a vacation, but apparently not. Number 17, two-tiered justice system. I mean, look at this. You go to vacation there and there's perverts in your bathroom, I guess. Number 18, weaponization of the judicial system against persons with opposing opinions. Number 19, censorship of free speech. Number 20, high levels of inflation, crime, nepotism, and corruption. Now, to be fair, she goes on to say, people want common sense policies and equal opportunities based on merit, excellence, and intelligence, and are fed up with the woke far left. That was moved to the top of the thing in the other report. But they're fed up with the woke far left nonsensical policies based on the use of identity politics, moral superiority, and division. People want to live, enjoy, and be happy without the state intruding on their personal space. Now, mind you, I was going to say, to be fair, she was saying, well, these are things that happened in the United States under Biden. But what relevance does that have to why you should vote for her for prime minister or for her party in parliament in Trinidad and Tobago? No indication what that might be. I don't really know where that comes from. My record that will show since 2020, I've been advocating against this woke far left extreme insanity. It's time for the world to move on from the insanity and destructive divisive politics of the Joe Biden Democrat administration. Again, no idea what that has to do with Trinidad or whatever problems they may be having there. But that should give you some idea if you were like, well, is there really any more connection between her and MAGA than Cambridge Analytica? The answer apparently is yes. And maybe there's a little more. I also happen to have handy, not that handy, I got to search around for it. I mentioned to you that, there was, I have this weird reaction thing about this drugs. I found a PBS article describing the reaction of the prime minister as well. Although I'd like to just sort of scan it to see if there's any indication of why she cares about that. You would have thought that the Trinidadian papers would have given that to us, but I'm not certain that they did. So this is a September 3rd piece in PBS.org. Trinidad and Tobago, PM celebrates Caribbean strike and says U.S. should kill all drug traffickers violently. The Prime Minister, again, you know who she is, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, has praised the U.S. strike on a boat suspected of carrying drugs in the southern Caribbean and said that all traffickers should be killed violently. U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that 11 people were killed on board this boat that departed Venezuela, which is located near Trinidad and Tobago. No Trinidadians had been killed at that point, I guess. I, along with most of the country, am happy that the U.S. naval deployment is having success in their mission. The pain and suffering that the cartels have inflicted on our nation is immense. I have no sympathy for the traffickers. The U.S. military should kill them all violently. And like I said, I was entertaining the possibility that there's been real trouble in Trinidad and Tobago with drug smuggling cartels. Maybe. I just didn't know. On the other hand, having read through the list that she advocated during her election campaign of problems afflicting whether it's the U.S., whether she thinks it's happening in the U.S. or thinks it's happening in Trinidad, I don't know. But it's a crazy list. It's the kind of list that makes me think maybe they're not having these problems in Trinidad, but she sees them as a stepping stone back into power. So she'll just say they're having these problems in Trinidad. I do not know. The PBS article continues, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said the drugs aboard the vessel were likely headed to Trinidad or elsewhere in the Caribbean. If they were on the vessel, we just don't know about that. Persad Bissessar said that restricting illegal guns, drugs, and human trafficking would decrease violence in the Caribbean region, and the twin island nation of Trinidad and Tobago, which has imposed two states of emergencies in recent months. Our country has been ravaged by bloody violence, maybe, and addiction because of the greed of these cartels, Persad Bissessar said. The slaughter of our people is fueled by evil cartel traffickers. On the other hand, does she believe Portland, Oregon has been burned to the ground? Maybe. So I don't know what to tell you. Next section here, U.S. action under scrutiny. Other Caribbean leaders were more reserved in their remarks. Barbadian Foreign Minister Kerry Simmons told the Associated Press on Wednesday that members of CARICOM, the regional trade bloc, sent a letter to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio asking for an open line of communication on developments, saying they want to avoid being surprised by any U.S. moves against Venezuela. What we want, really, is a structure where we would be able to have shared information affecting U.S. assets in the region, establishing channels of communication, and, importantly, where possible, some consultation to maintain practical cooperation for continued mutual confidence and avoidance of misunderstandings, he said. Yes, that's right. I guess Kerry is he. So, Simmons said that depending on Rubio's response, both sides could arrange a face-to-face meeting to discuss fears that the region's long-desired designation as a zone of peace is maintained. What effectively we are trying to do is work through the diplomatic channels of making sure that there are no surprises, Simmons said. Meanwhile, Colombian President Gustavo Petro on Wednesday questioned the U.S. operation, saying that it's possible to conduct maritime interdiction of drug shipments without attacking the vessel's occupants. Again, this dated before they attacked the Colombian boat most recently. He said that Colombia typically captures them since those transporting the drugs are not the big drug traffickers, but rather very poor young people from the region. Bombing the boat, and the vote, for that matter, violates the universal principle of proportionality of force and results in murder, the leftist president wrote on X. Juanita Gobertis, America's director at Human Rights Watch, or rather, America's director at Human Rights Watch, not the one owned by America, but the Americas writ large, said that while organized crime groups are a huge threat to human rights in Latin America, regional governments need to strengthen their judicial capacity to dismantle them. If the circumstances around this strike are exactly as the administration describes them, it would amount to an extrajudicial execution, prohibited under international law, she said. Next up, Tren de Aragua tentacles in Trinidad. Okay, now I'm interested. Let's find out what they think is going on there. Trump has said that the vessel targeted in the strike in international waters was operated by the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. No proof of that, but he has said it. The White House didn't immediately explain how the military determined that those aboard the vessel were Tren de Aragua members. In July, the government of Trinidad and Tobago designated Tren de Aragua as a terrorist organization. So, following our lead there, meaning that authorities can freeze any property, also following our leads, funds or assets owned or controlled by the gang. Not murder them. That's what we're doing, but that's not what our law authorizes. Neither, I guess, is it what Trinidad and Tobago's law authorizes. Authorities have confirmed that the gang is active in the Caribbean nation. Which authorities? I don't know. With its presence mainly in central and east Trinidad. A high-ranking police official with deep knowledge of gang operations told the AP that Tren de Aragua's operations are on a small scale in Trinidad. He said the group still has to contend with bigger local gangs and don't stay in certain areas when they go to Trinidad to collect money or talk business. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity because he feared repercussions, said authorities don't have an estimate of how many Tren de Aragua gang members operate in the Twin Island nation, given their constant illegal entry and departure. He said they deal mostly in drugs, weapons, and human trafficking. The strike came after the U.S. announced last month that it planned to boost its maritime forces in waters off Venezuela to fight threats from Latin American drug cartels. So, I guess the PBS article was in fact an AP piece being rerun there. But that gives us an American view of what reporters here in the United States are hearing from officialdom all over the Caribbean and in Trinidad and Tobago. But there's still more. Okay, so now I'll take you even further back in the archives of the show, I think. I don't know. It's a ways back. You probably, if you're a long time listener, will remember our reference to Trump Tower as the Mos Eisley of Earth, because it was filled with such a weird rogues gallery of international criminals and other ne'er-do-wells all over the place. And do you remember that one of them, or two of them, in fact, were FIFA officials, the international soccer governing body? You may remember one of them was Chuck Blaze, who was a bit of a weirdo, and I think kind of like a higher-up official in the a regional governing body that covers the United States and Central America and the Caribbean, which was like, who knows whether I ever had the pronunciation right, CONCACAF, that, you know, some conglomeration of all the various regions that comes out that way. And he was the weirdo that also he had an apartment in Trump Tower, but he also kept a second separate apartment that was exclusively for his cats, just so you get some sense of what kind of weirdo he is. He's gone. I mean, I think he's dead now, but also maintaining a presence in Trump Tower, I think both in a residential capacity, and he also kept offices there for CONCACAF, was ex-FIFA executive Jack Warner. Jack Warner, we read a little bit about, too, back when we discussed Chuck Blaze, but I have a write-up here from the OCCRP. It's been a while, but do you remember the OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project? Yeah, if I recall correctly, this was, didn't this start as Alexander Navalny's operation in Russia? Just sort of ended up having to track international criminal conspiracies and cartels across multiple regions. But they did a report, and I've got it in front of me, from when? December 22nd, 2022. They're getting ready for Christmas. Before they take their Christmas break, Anushka Delic, I'm guessing is the name of the pronunciation of the name of this reporter who put this together for OCCRP. Ex-FIFA executive Jack Warner financed, quote, election engineering campaign in Trinidad because he's from Trinidad. Isn't that something? And, well, if it wasn't for the fact that we spent so much time on it by now, you'd never otherwise guess what that campaign was. The subheader tells us, disgraced former FIFA vice president Jack Warner personally funded an ethnically divisive disinformation campaign in Trinidad and Tobago designed by an election engineering firm to discourage black Trinidadians from voting. Now, mind you, Jack Warner is himself a black Trinidadian, so it would seem on the surface like maybe something he wouldn't be interested in. But let's get into the reporting. We'll take our break at the appropriate time, and golly, isn't this something? Disgraced former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner personally funded an ethnically divisive disinformation campaign in Trinidad and Tobago designed by an election engineering firm to discourage black Trinidadians from voting, we are told again. Warner, in 2022, late 2022, is currently fighting extradition to the United States on charges of corruption, including that he accepted $5 million in bribes to vote for Russia, what? To be awarded the 2018 World Cup. So, wow, a little bit strange. Now to the meat of it. However, his involvement with the Do So campaign. Yes, that's the one. The Do So campaign led by SCL, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, has never before been revealed. The campaign, which may have swayed Trinidad's 2010 election in favor of his United National Congress Party, used graffiti, billboards, and music videos to suggest to black Trinidadian youth that they should not vote. And we're never in favor of a campaign like that. At the time of the Do So campaign, which ran during the 2010 Trinidad primaries, Warner's career in international football was sputtering to an end amid accusations that he had traded favors for money. Yeah, well, that was the accusation. And I guess, I don't know what the grounding of the accusation was, but it was there. He was, though, laying the groundwork for a second act as a Trinidadian politician, having been elected to represent the United National Congress Party in Parliament in 2007. So yeah, ethnically speaking, that is a party dominated by the Indo-Caribbean Trinidadians. But what can I tell you? He was interested, he joined up, and that campaign benefited his new party.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with this OCCRP piece. By the way, I think I might have got his name wrong. Alexei, not Alexander, but Alexei Navalny. And yes, he, I don't remember exactly what his relationship with OCCRP was. Not a founder per se, but an important outlet for him for a lot of his investigative journalism, which, as you know, eventually got him killed. And which was incredibly important in exposing, the emergence of the Russian oligarchy, though it hasn't stopped it yet, but it has certainly put the rest of the world on notice when dealing with the Russians, except for, I don't know, Trump. I guess it put him on notice. I think I should continue to deal with these guys and step up my game with them and take more money from them. Anyway, so we left off pointing out that the ex-FIFA vice president, Jack Warner, a Trinidadian, a black Trinidadian, Afro-Trinidadian, was looking for a second act at life in politics and was a member, for whatever reason, I don't know what attracted him to it, of the United National Congress Party, chiefly dominated by the Indo-Caribbean community there in Trinidad. But I guess, I wonder whether it made me think about whether, prominent black Republican politicians, the door's kind of wide open. They're very thrilled to have the cooperation of someone who doesn't fit the ethnic profile of their party to look like they're a more diverse party. And they're not, segregated parties, I don't believe. It just kind of has worked out that way. But I guess anybody sort of crossing the aisle might be welcomed and have the gates thrown open for them. And I'm sure he enjoyed that a great deal. Now, at the time, he also brings to the table the personal financing for the Do So campaign. And that was rather critical at the time. As let's see, the campaign, which may have swayed Trinidad's 2010 election in favor of his UNC party, used graffiti, billboards, and music videos, right, to suggest to black Trinidadian youth that they shouldn't vote. At the time of the Do So campaign, which ran during the 2010 Trinidad primaries, Warner's career was sputtering. He was looking for a second act as a politician. And the 2010 vote, it says here in OCCRP, was a critical juncture in Trinidadian politics, with the incumbent prime minister looking vulnerable after 3 terms in power. Given the stakes, one expert called the role played by SCL, again, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, really disturbing. That was the quote. Emma Bryant, a fellow at Bard College who studies information warfare and propaganda, said the revelations underscore the need for better oversight of influence firms. It's very contextual what can do damage in a particular society, she said. In Trinidad, there is this racial divide in politics. I guess we were right. And you can either play to that or try to find something that doesn't. This next section is titled Plans Hatched. SCL was formed in the 1990s by British businessman Nigel Oakes. We don't hear his name much I don't remember his name very much. Anyway, and invested $20 million into developing what Oakes called an advanced persuasion methodology. He was before his time. Now we just say it's AI and it cost $20 billion. The company later rebranded and launched a political section focusing on election management and other campaigns, mostly in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. On its website, taken offline after the company went into administration in 2019, it boasted of influencing political outcomes from Indonesia to South Africa. South Africa. And now we're accepting their quote-unquote refugees. Okay. The firm also brought on Alexander Nix, that's the guy we remember, I think, who took over its electioneering work and eventually started a new venture, Cambridge Analytica. This was the infamous election engineering agency that assisted Donald Trump's rise to the U.S. presidency in 2016. Long before Cambridge Analytica would enter Trump's orbit, Nix was busy working in the Caribbean under the SCL banner. Sven Hughes, very Caribbean guy, Sven Hughes, the former head of elections at SCL, said the firm had worked in Trinidad before, under the leadership of Nigel Oakes, who already had established contacts with an opposition party. At the time, a lot of contractors worked on campaigns in the region, he recalled. It was just, which election is next? And you get passed around. SCL spotted an opportunity to put an opposition party in power in Trinidad, which they saw as more advantageous. A fresh breath in government meant fresh deals, he noted. And I think basically if you put an opposition party over the top and in power, they're just that much more grateful to you. And I guess it's just that much more lucrative. And of course, replacing an incumbent party is something that other opposition parties in other countries will be interested in. They'll hear about what you did in Trinidad and say, who did that? Who engineered that? We want to hire them, right? Hughes said that one night in April of 2010, he and Nix waited in a rundown hotel room in Port of Spain, Trinidad, until they received a 3 a.m. phone call from Warner's lawyer. Remember the FIFA guy, Warner, we're talking about here. Om Lala. O-M is his first name. His last name is L-A-L-L-A. I don't know whether I'm anything close to pronouncing it right. Anyway, they waited for that phone call, which came through at 3 a.m., telling them that they could head over for a secret meeting. The four convened in Warner's FIFA regalia-clad office and made a plan. Warner gave us a tour of his various FIFA medals, photos, posters, and then Donald Trump stole one. And then we got down to business. Hughes recalled in an interview with OCCRP / Ostro, which, I don't know, an affiliated publication. No idea how I'm pronouncing it. O-S-T-R-O with a diacritical thingamabob over the S. But you know OCCRP. Well, they agreed that SCL would run what it called a, quote, groundswell, unquote, guerrilla marketing campaign ahead of the 2010 Trinidad primaries to show the United National Congress what SCL could do, and that Warner would pay for it. Now, I don't know what their elections are structured like exactly, and whether, funding something in the primaries has a very different, perhaps, connotation here in American elections versus a general election. But, and it may also be true in the Trinidadian elections. I just don't know. But it seems important to OCCRP. So I'm going to take their word for it for the moment. So again, this happened during the primaries, and it was supposed to be a demonstration of what SCL could do, and Warner was paying for it. Later, Warner would use his influence to get party leader Kamla Persad Bissessar to meet with the electioneering firm. Hughes said the hope was that SCL would be given a much larger contract worth $4 or $5 million to devise a campaign for the upcoming general election. So Warner was going to pay for a demonstration during the primaries and I guess get himself and his pals nominated. And then you would see the use of party money, and presumably, I think there was some implication earlier in one of the earlier stories that taxpayer money somehow went to SCL to pay for this as well. That was the plan. An email obtained by OCCRP shows that in late April 2010, Lala, the lawyer, sent Nix and Hughes a list of marginal constituencies that SCL should focus its campaign on. That sounds familiar. The following month, Lala told Hughes he could write to Warner's secretary to get the money for the campaign. She has payment of the sum of $62K used for SCL. I guess that's, I thought it was used, but there's no E in it. And I'm wondering whether that's supposed to be US dollars, 62,000 US dollars for SCL. And it would be used for them, of course, as well. But anyway, Lala wrote in another email leaked to The Guardian and shared with OCCRP. She will also provide you with the details of payment made in the sum of $15K US dollars for the license fee of the Do So campaign. It's an interesting way of structuring things. Citing attorney-client privilege, Lala said he could not answer questions about the campaign. Warner did not respond to written requests for comment. Reached by telephone, he said he was, quote, not interested in discussing it. Psychological judo, in scare quotes, is what comes up next. That's the next section heading. Hughes had already planned much of the campaign. Its name was inspired by an old Trinidadian man who made headlines when he crossed his arms in front of him, remember the logo I told you about, to refuse the incumbent prime minister to enter his property for an electioneering visit. Bingo! I had my behavior change campaign, or a, quote, psychological judo campaign, to be specific. Hughes wrote in the document he said he submitted to the FBI. He recalled drawing up the campaign artwork in his hotel room, a pair of black arms crossed with the line, "Do So," underneath, printed on the UNC coalition yellow. The implication was that youth should also cross their arms and abstain from politics. Like, I don't want to let you into my house, and I don't want to let you into my life as politicians either. Now, why it was on UNC coalition yellow, which to me gives away the game, that it's the UNC telling the base of their opponent's party not to vote. Like, I guess I might have thought to put it on some neutral color, but okay, that's very interesting. Let's see if they explain why that happened. And here are some examples of the posters on a wall downtown in I don't know where, Port of Spain. Let's assume. Yeah, it is Port of Spain. That's the caption says so. Do So's message of apolitical defiance took off among Trinidadian youth, but it also became infamous after a 2019 Netflix documentary about Cambridge Analytica highlighted it as a key example of the firm's covert influence operations. Anybody see that one? I may have seen that one. I don't know. Roughly half the population of Trinidad and Tobago is of African descent, while the other half is Indian. We had heard 35-35 with another 30 to spare. Unexplained as far as I'm concerned. I haven't, read about who they are just yet. But at any rate, the Netflix documentary included a secret voice recording of Nix bragging that the goal of the campaign was to increase voter apathy and discourage young Afro-Trinidadians from voting, since SCL's client was more popular among Indians. Nix explained the campaign's message like this: don't vote. it's a sign of resistance against not the government, against politics and voting. Well, obviously that. We knew that when it came to voting, all the Afro-Caribbean kids wouldn't vote because they do so. But all the Indian kids would do what their parents told them to do, which is to go out and vote. That is interesting. And here's a clip from the Netflix documentary, presumably delivering that message. Hughes denied this to OCCRP, insisting that the campaign wasn't intended to target voters by race and that he had devised it without any involvement from Nix. It was absolutely not some sort of divisional campaign, he said. It was only about making the voters feel empowered to stand up to Manning's increasingly autocratic government. It doesn't really sound like it fits, though, does it? However, a polling report created by SCL for the United National Congress and obtained by OCCRP and OSTRO notes that the campaign was designed to focus specifically on Afro-Trinidadian voters. That's why the arms and hands are black. Bryant, the disinformation expert, said it was, quote, a little bit naive to think they weren't leveraging the different ethnic groups against each other. They were leveraging some things that essentially were designed to get at the youth, that they would reinforce these kinds of divisive ethnic processes of decision-making in the elections, and they were basically trying to work with people who really didn't care about the youth of the country, and doing it in such a way that was clearly trying to stoke divisions, she added. Despite the seeming success of Do So, SCL never ended up landing the big assignment it was angling for. Warner got us a meeting with Kamala, that's interesting, but Bertie blew it, Hughes recalled, referring to Nix by his nickname. Kamala clearly didn't like his long presentation style with all those slides and told him to hurry up. He took great offense at this and carried on with his slides. Ultimately, he said, Nix got into a shouting match with the party boss and had to be escorted from the room. But the United National Party did win the 2010 parliamentary elections, becoming a leading partner in the People's Partnership Coalition. Warner was appointed Public Works and Transport Minister and later Minister of National Security. What? Why? I mean, I'm assuming people were like, does it really even matter? I mean, what is really the role on the international stage of the Minister for National Security? National security is national security. I mean, it's no joke. It's your country. But, you know, I don't know what the international role for the Minister for National Security for Trinidad and Tobago is, but you can certainly assume that he's in prime bribe position at the very least. You got to imagine that whatever governmental money is being spent there's got to be a significant portion of it that can be siphoned off in the name of national security. Anyway, CA Political, the Cambridge Analytica arm focused on political campaigning, boasted on its website how it had influenced the 2010 elections in Trinidad and Tobago and gotten Persad Bissessar elected as prime minister. Though there's some question about what they actually did for her or whether she even wanted them to do anything, I guess. And yet, she's now super MAGA. Nonetheless, accusations of corruption eventually caught up with Warner, and FIFA suspended him in 2011 for allegedly organizing the payment of cash bribes to members of a Caribbean football association. Soon after that, he was forced to resign from both FIFA and CONCACAF, the influential Caribbean and North American Football Association that he led. There you go, Caribbean and North American, I don't know. You see if you can put that together, CONCACAF. Okay. In addition to the bribery allegations, Warner has been accused of failing to pay Trinidadian football players their bonus money, stealing funds for Haitian earthquake victims, holy mackerel, allowing his son to sell black market World Cup tickets through a family travel agency, jeez, and building a $26 million CONCACAF facility on land that he owned, essentially granting him ownership of it. In 2015, he was caught in one of the biggest bribery scandals in football history after the U.S. government, our government, alleged he had taken in millions of dollars worth of bribes from South African officials to fix the voting for the location of the 2010 World Cup. Later that year, He was banned from football for life and then replaced by other people who took bribes about where to put the World Cup. Totally different now. In 2018, Nix became the face of Cambridge Analytica's downfall when the UK's Channel 4 News revealed secret recordings of him selling the company's techniques, including entrapment and bribery, like Jared's dad, to prospective clients who were actually undercover reporters. So how do you like that? By the way, contributing to the reporting here, Mark Bassant, or I guess as Justin Wolfers would say, Bassant, who is of the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian, one of the papers previously cited. So how do you like that for tying in old-time show throwback material? Wow. Moss Eisley on Earth, the FIFA towers, Donald Trump, MAGA weirdos winning elections from out of the blue and changing the direction of the country and standing them up in opposition to the entirety of the rest of the Caribbean community. Kind of amazing. All right, I'm going to shift gears away from all of this, all of the archives and all the old stories to something current. And today's a hell of a day to be away from the microphone for the fact that there's a story out there looming like this one. I guess Trump decided it was time to start building his ridiculous ballroom, and all the things that he promised about the ballroom, the price of the ballroom, the size of the ballroom, the impact of the ballroom on the historic White House, all, essentially turned out to be lies. And in building this thing, which according to the stories that I've read about it, he said, oh, well, it's going to be next to the White House. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to touch the White House. And of course, I guess it's not going to touch the White House now because they tore down the part of the White House that it would have touched. The East Wing was demolished yesterday afternoon. He waited until after the show was over. Trump. Well, yeah. So that was rather surprising. And, there's a whole historic preservation thing and a National Park Service and everybody who has control over this stuff just standing around saying, well, I guess we don't have control over this stuff because he just wrecked it. Are they going to force him to file paperwork, build it over again? Well, I don't know. There's nothing they can do. I guess, although, I feel like we should put it to them, shouldn't somebody get arrested? You just wrecked the White House. I don't think I can wreck the White House, right? And I understand that you're going to feel like, well, I can't arrest the president, but I don't know, arrest the construction crew. God knows Trump is probably about to arrest the construction crew anyway. Once he's done and it's time to pay them, he'll be arresting them. There's an actual story about it already. Of course, the Washington Post has one. It's a local story. Local building makes bad. The worst renovations on the White House since 1814, when the British did it. White House begins demolishing East Wing facade to build Trump's ballroom. Notice here that it's the White House that is demolishing. So it's okay. The White House demolishes the White House. There's nothing you can do about it. Times really have changed. Like growing up as a kid, I thought if you smashed through the doors and sacked the Capitol, you would be in big trouble. You would. And if you demolished part of the White House, you would definitely be in big trouble. But I know now that those are childish fantasies, apparently. So here we go. The White House has begun demolishing itself. The president has claimed construction of the $250 million ballroom wouldn't, quote, interfere with the existing White House structure. And it won't, because it won't be there. They won't interfere with one another because we're going to wreck the White House. Jonathan Edwards and Dan Diamond, tell us what's going on. Demolition crews on Monday began tearing down part of the White House to build President Donald Trump's long-desired ballroom, despite his pledge that construction of the $250 million addition wouldn't, quote, interfere with the existing building. Construction teams were demolishing a portion of the East Wing with a backhoe ripping through the structure. You got to see these pictures. According to a photo shared with the Washington Post and two people who witnessed the activity and spoke on condition of anonymity to describe it. By the way, it's happening at the most public building, from the outside anyway, in Washington. Everybody can just stand there and look at it. You don't really have to tell me. According to two sources, according to the eyeballs of everybody in Washington, they looked at the White House and they were wrecking it. Hello. I don't really need to have sourcing on that. A cluster of people, including members of the Secret Service, why are we allowing this? Stood on the steps of the Treasury Department to watch the construction unfold, said one of the people. Sounds of construction were also audible on the White House campus. It wasn't construction, it was destruction, but okay. Although the project was not easily visible to the public given fencing on the grounds. Okay. And yet, still, you probably would have seen the backhoe smashing things and heard ripping and shredding. And I guess, who knows what you can see over the fencing. But if you're standing next door or in any of the buildings nearby, you'd be able to see it. Wow. Trump acknowledged the project in remarks on Monday afternoon in the White House's East Room, gesturing to the wall behind him. Right on the other side, you have a lot of construction going on. None, of course, which you might hear periodically, the president said at an event honoring the Louisiana State University and Louisiana State University at Shreveport baseball teams. He subsequently posted on his Truth Social platform that the much-needed project has begun. Nobody needs a ballroom. Yeah, but this is his line about it. For more than 150 years, every president has dreamt about having a ballroom at the White House to accommodate people for grand parties, state visits, etc. Democrats panned the project, with California Governor Gavin Newsom and other lawmakers arguing that Trump's priorities and preferences were not aligned with average Americans. Trump's billionaire ballroom. This is a disgrace. Welcome to the second Gilded Age, Representative Darren Soto, Democrat of Florida, wrote on social media. Of course, other people pointing out the government shut down. There's people who aren't going to get their food stamps pretty soon, but he's building a ballroom. Now, it goes on to say that Trump has long touted his plans for a 90,000 square foot structure that would nearly double the footprint of the main building and its east and west wings, except the east wing is gone now. He had also suggested that the construction would not affect the existing White House. It won't interfere with the current building. It won't be. It'll be near it, but not touching it. And it pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. Trump said during an executive order signing in July. It's my favorite. It's my favorite place. I love it. A White House official, speaking on condition of anonymity to describe destruction, for whatever reason they keep calling it construction, on the ballroom, confirmed that the demolition process on the East Wing began Monday. Thank you. Gee whiz. Thanks for telling me. I saw the picture. Other parts of the project, such as efforts to preserve objects of historical value, have been underway for several weeks, the official said. Officials declined to provide an explanation for Trump's earlier comments that the new construction would not interfere with the existing building. Officials have separately said that the ballroom would replace the East Wing, noting the many changes made to that structure long before Trump's presidency. The East Wing was constructed in 1902 and has been renovated and changed many times, with a second story added in 1942, the White House said in July. The administration also said that it expected construction to begin by September, detailing plans to make some of the most significant changes to the People's House in a century. Although, honestly, more often I hear the People's House referring to the House of Representatives for some reason. Trump originally estimated the project would cost $200 million to build, but has since upped that to $250 million. But actually, the story goes on to say that's not what he originally estimated the project would cost. You'll see in a minute. But even if it had been it was his original cost estimate during this term in office. But okay, so a 25% price increase. That's not great. The National Park Service, which manages the White House grounds, I don't think he owns them actually, did not respond to inquiries about how much the East Wing would be destroyed. That seems like something they should have a statement ready for. In a 56-page document about maintaining the fundamental character of the White House and the surrounding grounds, the Park Service said in 2014 it would work with presidential administrations, the U.S. Secret Service, and other agencies, quote, to ensure both the preservation and the use of one of the most recognized houses in the world. But they didn't mean it, apparently. The East Wing has traditionally been used by the First Lady and her team, but who cares? Offices for the president and his top deputies have long been located in the West Wing. Trump last week also touted his planned ballroom during a dinner with executives from the tech, finance, and defense industries, telling them that the project was fully financed after receiving donations as large as $25 million from dozens of companies, including Apple, Amazon, Lockheed Martin, and Coinbase. It notes parenthetically here, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, which, okay, therefore, all right, they've contributed to Amazon. Trump hosted that dinner in the East Room, currently the largest room in the White House, a frequent frustration for the president, who has insisted the building needs a larger venue to host large groups of VIPs. He also has said repeatedly that he repeatedly offered to construct the ballroom, but officials in the Obama and Biden administrations turned him down. I was going to build a beautiful, beautiful ballroom like I have at Mar-a-Lago, Trump said in February, adding that he had made the offer to the Biden administration. It was going to cost about $100 million. I offered to do it, and I never heard back. But, pause for just a moment to say, okay, so Trump's original estimate was $100 million, not $200 million. It's a $150 million cost overrun, 150% over budget. But, whatever. He's a brilliant businessman, something. He was going to fire the Fed chairman for an alleged cost overrun, which he was wrong about when they were building their buildings. But this one, doesn't matter. Anyway, okay, long past time for us to start the music and make our exit. We're almost at the end of the article anyway. We only need add at this point. Trump has said the ballroom will seat up to 650 people, more than triple the capacity of the East Room. Okay, so that gives you some indication of nothing in particular. La-di-da, business as usual. He's just tearing down the White House in front of everybody. I guarantee you none of that paperwork is done. Well, you know how Trump is with paperwork. There's no way he filled any of those things out. And I assume that there's going to be officialdom all over Washington who are just going to have to stand there and say, he can't, but it's against he didn't fill out and then what are they going to do about it? They're going to fine him? Would he pay such a fine? They're not going to arrest him. Are they going to arrest the workers? Are they going to arrest White House staffers? I think they're just going to watch it go. And the next Democratic president, people are already calling on the next Democratic president, if there ever is one again, if there's ever any other president who's in a Trump, to tear this thing down. And I think symbolically it's probably a good idea to actually tear this thing down. But just as a matter of national security, I think when we started talking about the possibility of this thing being built, we mentioned this thing is going to be so stuffed full of hidden microphones, toilet cams, God knows what, spying on everybody. They're never going to be able to debug this.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
I mean, it's going to take a real effort, just like this airplane that he got from Qatar. But he really does have an established record of putting those hidden cameras and hidden microphones all over the place. That's something we could read about some point in the future. It would be a real throwback to the very, very beginnings of this show. Maybe we'll try that when we come back. But we'll be back live tomorrow, and Greg with me on Wednesday. We'll see you soon. Take care.